For 10 years, she dreamed of a man with storm-grey eyes reaching for her through prison bars. Then one night, he spoke her name and begged for help. She Googled him the next morning. He was real. A convicted murderer. And he had 90 days until execution. Welcome back to Proudly Black Stories, my beautiful, amazing Pride family. I pray that God's love and mercies continue to abound in your household. You all have been so supportive, and I promise to always try my best to give you the best stories as I learn and improve every day. If this is your first time coming across my video, do comment below where you're watching from and hit subscribe to officially join the Pride family. The silk sheets were strangling her. Ilara jolted awake at 3 in the morning on May 15th, her heart hammering so violently she thought her ribs might crack. Sweat plastered her dark hair to her temples, and her tank top clung to her skin like a second layer. But it wasn't the nightmare that left her gasping for air. It was the impossible weight of his voice still echoing in her skull. Ilara, they're killing me in 90 days. Please, I'm innocent. She pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to erase the image burned into her retinas. Storm-grey eyes, calloused hands wrapped around iron bars, knuckles white with desperation. A scar cutting through his left eyebrow that she'd memorized 1,000 times over. Fabian Ricochet. The man who had haunted her sleep for 10 years, ever since she was 15 years old and woke up crying in her childhood bedroom, convinced she'd lost something precious she couldn't name. But tonight was different. Tonight, he had spoken directly to her. Tonight, he had known her name. Her laptop sat on the nightstand, and her hands were moving before her brain caught up, fingers trembling so badly she mistyped the search 3 times. Fabian Ricochet, Washington, prison. The screen loaded. The world stopped. Billionaire tech innovator, convicted of murder. Execution set, August 15th. Ilara's stomach lurched. She clicked the first article, then the second, then the 10th, her breathing becoming shallower with each word. Fabian Ricochet, co-founder of Ricochet Veil Technologies, convicted 15 years ago of murdering his business partner Cassian Vale. The evidence had been overwhelming. Fingerprints on the murder weapon, $50 million transferred to an offshore account under his name, security footage conveniently corrupted at the exact moment of the killing. The trial had lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. And in 90 days, the state of Washington was going to kill him. She stared at his mugshot, the photograph taken 15 years earlier. He looked younger, clean-shaven, but those eyes... God, those eyes were the same ones that had watched her across the void of sleep with a hunger that made her forget how to breathe. Her finger traced the screen, and she whispered to the pixels, "I'm coming for you." The sun rose and found her surrounded by printed articles, her small Seattle apartment transformed into a conspiracy theorist's cave. Yellow highlighter marked inconsistencies. Red pen circled unanswered questions. Her eyes felt like sandpaper, but her mind was electric, firing on all cylinders for the first time in months. The door burst open at 7 in the morning. Sienna Reeves, her best friend since college, stood in the doorway holding 2 coffee cups and wearing her signature leather jacket over paint-splattered jeans. Her expression shifted from cheerful to alarmed in the span of a heartbeat. What the hell happened here? Ilara looked up from the floor, where she'd been cross-referencing trial transcripts. He's real. Who's real? You look like you haven't slept. I haven't. Ilara stood, her knees protesting, and grabbed one of the coffee cups. The man from my dreams, Fabian Ricochet. He's real, Sienna. He's been real this entire time, and they're going to execute him in 90 days. Sienna's face went carefully blank, the expression she wore when she thought Ilara was spiraling. Ellie, honey, we've talked about this. The dreams are just dreams, stress manifestations. Your therapist said, he knew my name. Ilara's voice cracked. For 10 years he never spoke directly to me. He looked at me, reached for me. But last night he said my name. He told me they're killing him. And then I looked him up, And Sienna, everything matches. The scar, the eyes, the way She couldn't finish. How could she explain the way Fabian Ricochet looked at her in dreams like she was oxygen and he was drowning? How could she articulate the certainty in her bones that she knew this man more intimately than she'd ever known anyone, despite never having touched him in waking life? Sienna set down her coffee and picked up one of the articles. Her expression darkened. "Elara, this says he murdered his business partner in cold blood. $50 million. This isn't some wrongly convicted innocent. This is he didn't do it. How can you possibly know that?" "Because I know him." Elara's hands were shaking again. "I know the man who told me about the treehouse he built when he was 8. Who cried when he talked about his mother dying of cancer. Who looks at me like I'm the only light in his darkness. That man isn't a murderer." Sienna's voice softened. "Those were dreams, babe. Just dreams. Then why is he real?" The question hung in the air between them, unanswerable. Sienna finally sighed and pulled Elara into a hug. Okay. Let's say, hypothetically, there's something weird happening. What are you going to do about it?" Elara pulled back, and her jaw was set with a determination that surprised even herself. "I'm going to save him." 2 days later, Elara sat in front of her laptop, staring at the Washington State Penitentiary visitor application form. She'd crafted a lie so detailed it almost felt real, a graduate student researching wrongful convictions for her criminal justice thesis. She'd created a fake university email, forged a student ID, even drafted a research proposal that cited actual academic papers. Her finger hovered over the submit button. If she did this, there was no going back. She'd be stepping into a maximum security prison to meet a convicted murderer based on nothing but fever dreams and gut instinct. Her job at the Morrison Gallery was already on thin ice after she'd called in sick for 2 consecutive days. Her savings account had exactly $4,327, barely enough to cover 3 months of rent. She clicked submit. The approval email arrived 16 hours later, so fast it made her skin prickle with unease. Visitor request approved. Available dates and times listed below. Elara stared at the screen, her heart racing. 48 hours. She had 48 hours until her scheduled visit on May 20th at 2 in the afternoon. She opened a new browser tab and kept digging. The story of Ricochet Veil Technologies was the stuff of Silicon Valley legend. Fabian Ricochet and Cassian Veil, 2 MIT dropouts who'd revolutionized quantum encryption in their early 20s. They'd built their company from a garage startup to a billion-dollar empire in 5 years, attracting contracts from governments and militaries worldwide. The technology they'd developed was allegedly unbreakable, a fortress for digital secrets in an age of constant surveillance. Then Cassian Veil died. According to the prosecution's timeline, Fabian had shot his partner twice in their private lab on the evening of March 3rd, 15 years ago. The murder weapon was found in a dumpster 3 blocks away, Damien's fingerprints clear as day. Security footage from the building showed Fabian entering the lab at 9:47 in the evening and leaving at 11:03, right within the coroner's estimated time of death. The $50 million had been transferred at 10:32 from the company's account to an offshore bank, the digital trail leading directly to Damien's personal laptop. The defense had been, in a word, pathetic. Damien's lawyer, a woman named Mira Ashby, had barely cross-examined witnesses. She'd presented no alternative theories, no character witnesses, no expert testimony challenging the forensics. Fabian himself had hardly spoken during the trial, his only statement a flat, "I didn't kill Cassian." That convinced no one. But Elara found the crack in the narrative while reading a archived blog post from a tech journalist who'd covered the trial. The writer had noted something strange. Cassian Veil's widow, Isolde Severin, who'd remarried within 6 months of the murder to a wealthy defense contractor named Lucien Veil, had given the most peculiar statement on the witness stand. When asked if she believed Fabian Ricochet had killed her husband, she'd said, "Fabian Ricochet is exactly what he appears to be. Not guilty, not a murderer, just exactly what he appears to be." What did that mean? Ilara pulled up society pages, social media archives, anything she could find about Isolde Severin Vale. The woman was elegant, poised, photographed at charity galas in designer gowns. Her current husband, Lucian Vale, shared a last name with the murdered Cassian. Brothers? Cousins? The connection felt important, but Ilara couldn't see the shape of it yet. She worked through the night again, and when dawn broke on May 18th, she made a decision that terrified her. She quit her job. Her boss, Bernard Morrison, a perpetually irritated man who wore bow ties and spoke in clipped sentences, looked almost relieved. "Your work has been distracted lately, Miss Moonstone. Perhaps this is for the best." Ilara cleaned out her desk, ignoring the pitying looks from her co-workers, and walked out into the Seattle drizzle, feeling simultaneously liberated and insane. Sienna called her that evening. "Tell me you didn't actually quit." "I quit. Jesus, Ellie." Sienna's voice was tight with worry. You're throwing your entire life away for a man you've never met, a man who's been convicted of murder. Do you hear how that sounds? I hear it. And you're doing it anyway? Ilara looked at the mugshot she'd printed and pinned to her wall, those storm-grey eyes staring back at her. "I have to. I can't explain it, Sienna. But if I don't do this, if I let him die without trying, I'll regret it for the rest of my life." There was a long silence. Then Sienna sighed. "Okay, I think you're insane. But okay, just promise me you'll be careful. Maximum security prisons aren't exactly safe spaces. I promise." But Ilara didn't notice the black sedan that had been parked across from her apartment for the past 3 days. Didn't see the man inside make a phone call at precisely 8:14 in the evening. "She's committed," the man said into the phone. "Quit her job. Visit scheduled for the 20th. A cold voice on the other end replied, "Let her go to him. It'll be easier to eliminate them both together." May 20th arrived, wrapped in fog. Ilara dressed carefully that morning, choosing clothes that felt like armor. Black jeans, a simple grey sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. When had her eyes developed that feverish intensity? When had her face become so gaunt? The drive to Washington State Penitentiary took 2 hours and 17 minutes. The facility loomed out of the mist like something from a Gothic novel, all concrete and barbed wire and guard towers. Ilara's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles went white. What was she doing? What was she possibly thinking? But then she remembered the dream from last night. Damien's voice rough and broken as he whispered, "I feel you, even when I'm awake, your skin against mine in the moonlight. I'd burn this whole prison down just to touch you once in the waking world." She got out of the car. Security took 45 minutes. They searched her bag 3 times, ran her ID twice, made her walk through a metal detector and submit to a pat-down from a stone-faced female guard. Finally, a man in a corrections officer uniform, his name tag reading Officer Cross, gestured for her to follow. "Visiting room 3, he said. 30 minutes. No physical contact beyond brief hand-holding across the partition. Any violations and the visit terminates immediately. Understood?" Understood. The visiting room was exactly like every prison movie she'd ever seen. Fluorescent lights, scratched plexiglass partitions, metal stools bolted to the floor. 3 other visitors were already seated, speaking in low voices to inmates in orange jumpsuits. Ilara sat at Station 7. Her heart was going to explode. She was going to pass out. She was going to... The door on the opposite side opened. Fabian Ricochet walked in, flanked by 2 guards, his wrists cuffed in front of him. The air left Ilara's lungs. He was thinner than in the photographs, his orange jumpsuit hanging loose on a frame that suggested he'd once been broader. Stubble shadowed his jaw. The scar through his left eyebrow was slightly raised, an old injury long healed, but his eyes were exactly the same, storm grey and devastating, and fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel stripped bare. The guards uncuffed one of his wrists and secured him to a bolt on the table before stepping back to a respectful distance. Fabian sat slowly, as if moving through water. His gaze never left hers. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just stared at each other across the scratched plexiglass, two people confirming that the impossible was real. His voice, when it finally came, was rough from disuse and cracked at the edges. "You're real." "What do you mean, I am real?" "Hold on, do you also have—" "Yes." He interrupted her. His eyes closed briefly, and when they opened again, there was something raw and unguarded in his expression. "How long have you dreamed of me?" 10 years. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Since I was 15. Damien's jaw clenched. He leaned forward, chains clinking softly. "I've dreamed of you for 7. Every night since May 15th, 7 years ago. I thought I was losing my mind. Thought prison had finally broken something in my head. It started on May 15th for me too. 10 years ago." She was shaking now, adrenaline and shock coursing through her system. "I didn't know you were real. I thought you were just, I don't know, some manifestation of loneliness maybe, or longing for something I couldn't name." She met his eyes. "I never imagined you were actually out here. You shouldn't have come. Elara Moonstone. You should have stayed in your safe little life and let the monster in your dreams fade away. You're not a monster. You don't know what I am." Damien's hands curled into fists on the table. "You don't know what I've done, what I've become in here. Then tell me, because you've haunted me in my sleep for most of my life, and I'm not about to leave here without answers." Fabian stared at her, something flickering across his face that looked like pain. "You want the truth? Fine. Before prison, I wasn't a good man. I built my company on ruthless tactics, crushed competitors, bent laws until they nearly broke. Cassian and I, we were partners in every sense, including the uglier aspects of business. I'm not some innocent victim. Did you kill him? No." The word was flat, absolute. "But I'm not blameless either. The empire I built, it had blood in the foundation. Just not Cassian's." Elara processed this. The cognitive dissonance of knowing someone intimately through dreams while simultaneously not knowing them at all. "Why didn't you defend yourself at trial?" "I read the transcripts. You barely said anything." His expression shuttered, because everyone who tried to help me ended up destroyed. My lawyer, Mira Ashby, she was supposed to file an appeal. 3 days after she submitted the paperwork, she drove her car off a bridge. They called it suicide. His voice dropped. "I won't let you become another body." Something fierce and hot flared in Elara's chest. "You don't get to decide that. I didn't spend 10 years dreaming of you, loving you, just to walk away now that I've found you." Damien's control cracked. His hand shot out, fingers reaching through the small gap at the bottom of the partition, and Elara didn't hesitate. She reached back, and when their fingertips touched, electricity jolted through her entire body. His skin was warm, calloused, real. "You don't know what you're saying," he breathed, his fingers curling around hers with a desperation that made her chest ache. "You don't know me, Elara. In here I've become something—" "I know you," she cut him off fiercely. "I know the man who told me about the treehouse he built with his father before the cancer took him. Who cried when he talked about his mother reading him Tolkien before bed. Who looks at me like I'm the only light in his darkness. That's who you are." His grip tightened. "I'm going to ruin you. You should run. Try to stop me from saving you." Her voice was steady despite the tears gathering in her eyes. "I dare you." For a moment, Fabian looked like he might argue. Then his thumb stroked across her knuckles, a touch so gentle it contradicted everything about their harsh surroundings, and his voice dropped to something raw and barely controlled. I've imagined this moment for 7 years, touching you. But in my head, you weren't wearing this many clothes, and there weren't bars between us. Heat flooded Ilara's face, but she didn't pull away. When you get out, you can make those fantasies real. His eyes darkened with something that made her stomach flip. When I get out, I'm keeping you in my bed for a week straight. I'm going to worship every inch of skin I've only touched in dreams. And Ilara? His voice became gravel and smoke. You're not going to remember your own name by the time I'm done. The words should have shocked her. Should have felt like too much, too fast. Instead, they felt like a promise she'd been waiting 10 years to hear. A guard called out, 5 minutes. Damien's jaw clenched. I'll come back. As many times as they'll let me. We're going to prove you're innocent. Ilara said. Ilara, the case is old. The evidence. Then we'll find new evidence. She squeezed his hand. I'm not giving up on you. So you'd better not give up on yourself. Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the armor he'd built. His voice, when he spoke again, was thick with emotion he couldn't quite hide. 7 years ago, when you first appeared in my dreams, I'd been in here for 8 years. I was close to the edge, planning how to do it, when to do it. And then you showed up, this impossible girl, with eyes like the sky I couldn't see anymore, and you looked at me like I was still human. You saved my life before you ever knew I existed. Ilara's vision blurred. Then let me save it again. The guard moved closer. Time's up. Fabian stood reluctantly, his fingers slipping from hers with visible reluctance. Come back on Wednesday. Visiting days are Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'll be here. He turned to leave, then paused and looked back over his shoulder. Ilara? Yes? His eyes held hers with an intensity that stole her breath. In my dreams last night, you were wearing a blue dress, the color of deep water, and your hair was down. You were smiling at me like I'd given you something precious. Ilara's hand went to her ponytail unconsciously. I dreamed that too. I know. The corner of his mouth lifted in something that wasn't quite a smile but was close. Because we're connected. You and I. Across whatever impossible distance. I felt you before I knew you. And now that I've touched you, even just your hand, Ilara, I'm never letting you go. The possessiveness in his voice should have alarmed her. Instead, it felt like coming home. I understand, she whispered. The guards led him away, and Ilara sat alone in the visiting room for a full 10 minutes after, trying to remember how to breathe normally. Officer Cross, the guard who'd escorted her in, appeared at her shoulder. Miss Moonstone, you need to clear the room. She stood on shaking legs. Officer Cross, can I ask you something? He regarded her with neutral eyes. Depends on the question. Fabian Ricochet. Is he okay? In here, I mean. Is he safe? Something flickered across the officer's face. He's a survivor, that's all I can say. But Miss Moonstone? A word of advice. Whatever you're planning, whatever you think you're doing, you should know that some people don't want that man's case reopened. Powerful people. Be careful. Before she could respond, he walked away. Ilara drove back to Seattle in a daze, Damien's words echoing in her head, the possessive certainty in his voice, the way he'd touched her hand like it was something sacred and profane all at once. She'd found him. He was real, and in 87 days the state was going to kill him unless she could prove what every instinct in her body was screaming, that Fabian Ricochet was innocent. Her apartment felt empty and cold when she returned. She made tea she didn't drink and stared at the evidence board she'd created on her wall. Somewhere in this mess was the truth. Her phone rang at 8:30 in the evening. Unknown number. She answered. Hello? Ilara Moonstone. The voice was male, unfamiliar, with a faint Boston accent. Who is this? My name is Jax Corvid. I'm a private investigator. I heard through certain channels that you've taken an interest in the Fabian Ricochet case. Ilara's grip tightened on the phone. How did you get my number? I'm very good at my job. Listen, I don't have much time. I've been following the Ricochet case for 3 years. There are inconsistencies, things that don't add up. If you're serious about helping him, we should meet. Why would you help him? Because I don't like seeing innocent people die, and because someone's paying a lot of money to make sure Fabian Ricochet stays exactly where he is. That kind of effort suggests guilt. Meet me tomorrow. Pike Place Market, noon, by the fish throwers. Come alone. He hung up before she could respond. Ilara stared at her phone, her mind racing. This could be a trap. It probably was a trap, but what choice did she have? She texted Sienna, "If I don't call you by 1 p.m. tomorrow, I'm at Pike Place Market meeting someone potentially dangerous." The response came back immediately. "What? Then, I'm coming with you." "No. If something happens, I need you safe to tell people where I went." "Ellie, this could be dangerous." "I know. But I'll be careful, I promise." Pike Place Market at noon on May 21st was its usual chaos of tourists, fish vendors, and street musicians. Ilara stood by the famous fish-throwing counter, her heart hammering, scanning the crowd for what? She had no idea what Jack's corvid looked like. A man sidled up next to her, his attention apparently on the flying salmon. He was maybe 35, with dark hair pulled into a small bun, a leather jacket, and the kind of face that suggested he'd seen things he couldn't unsee. "Don't look at me," he said quietly. "Just watch the fish." Ilara kept her eyes forward. "You're Jack's?" "Yes." "Walk with me." They moved through the market, Jax maintaining a careful distance, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. He led her to a quieter corner near the craft stalls. "So," he said, leaning against a wall with studied casualness, "you visited Fabian Ricochet yesterday. 2 hours later, someone accessed your apartment while you were at the library. They didn't take anything, just photographed your research." Ilara's blood ran cold. "How do you—" "I have cameras on your building." "Don't be flattered, I have cameras on lots of buildings. The point is, you're already on someone's radar. Someone who doesn't want you digging into this case." "Who?" "That's the question, isn't it?" Jax pulled out a battered tablet and swiped through images. "Fabian Ricochet and Cassian Vale, partners, friends since MIT, built an empire together. Then Vale turns up dead, and all the evidence points to Ricochet. But here's what's interesting. He zoomed in on a photograph of Cassian Vale. This man supposedly died 15 years ago. 2 gunshots to the chest, the body identified by his fiancée, Isolde Severin. I know all this. Do you know that Isolde Severin married a man named Lucien Vale 6 months after Cassian's death? I saw that. I assumed they were related. Brothers, maybe?" Jax smiled thinly. "That's what I thought too. But there's no record of Lucien Vale existing before 16 years ago. No birth certificate, no school records, nothing. He appeared, fully formed, with a fortune from overseas investments right around the time Cassian supposedly died." Ilara's mind raced. "You think—" "I think Cassian Vale didn't die. I think he faked his death, framed his partner, and started a new life with a new name and the woman they'd both loved." Jax's eyes were hard. "Isolde was engaged to Fabian first, you know, before she left him for Cassian." The world tilted. Why would he do that? Why frame Damien? For sole ownership of their technology. Ricochet Vale's quantum encryption is worth billions. Governments, militaries, they'd pay anything for unbreakable security. But Fabian had principles. He didn't want to sell to just anyone. He was ethical. Jax said the word like it was foreign. That kind of ethics costs money. Cassian was more flexible. Can you prove any of this? Not yet, but I can find proof. If you can pay me, my rates aren't cheap. Ilara thought of her dwindling savings. How much? $5,000 to start. More if this gets complicated, which it will. I'll get you the money. Jack studied her with something like respect. You really love him, don't you? I don't know what you're all about. All I'm doing is helping a man who was wrongly convicted. Jax pushed off the wall. Fair enough. I'll start digging. But Miss Moonstone? Be very careful. Whoever framed Fabian Ricochet killed at least one person and destroyed countless others to keep him in that cage. They won't hesitate to add you to the body count. He disappeared into the crowd before she could respond. Elara's second visit to the prison was on Wednesday, May 23rd, at 2 in the afternoon. This time, the security process felt less foreign, though no less invasive. Officer Cross, the same guard from before, escorted her to the visiting room with an expression that might have been sympathy. He's in holding cell 3, Cross said. They'll bring him out in a few minutes. Thank you. This time, when Fabian entered the visiting room, Elara saw what she'd missed before. Fresh bruises shadowing his ribs beneath the orange jumpsuit. A split in his lower lip, recently scabbed. The way he moved, carefully like his body hurt. Rage flooded through her, hot and immediate. The guards secured him and stepped back. Fabian met her eyes, and his expression softened in a way that transformed his entire face. You came back. I told you I would. Her voice was tight. Who hurt you? Doesn't matter. Tell me. Elara, it's prison. Things happen. She reached through the partition gap, and he took her hand immediately, his thumbs stroking across her knuckles like he couldn't help himself. Don't lie to me. Please. His jaw clenched. Some inmates have been encouraged to make my last days uncomfortable. Guard told me there's money involved, probably from the same people who framed me in the first place. But I've survived 15 years in here. I can survive 84 more days. You shouldn't have to just survive. You should be free. Damien's grip tightened on her hand. You're working on it, aren't you? I can see it in your eyes. You've been digging. I hired a private investigator. His name is Jax Corvid. He thinks... She took a breath. He thinks Cassian Vale faked his death. That he's alive, using a new identity. Lucian Vale. The name hit Fabian like a physical blow. His face went white. Lucian Vale, you know him? I know of him. He's a major defense contractor now. Married to... His voice cracked. To Isolde. Your ex-fiancée. Fabian looked away, and the pain in his profile was devastating. She left me a month before the murder, said Cassian could give her the life she deserved. Wealth, status, security. Things I was too focused on principles to provide fast enough. 2 weeks after she left, Cassian was dead, and I was arrested. 6 months later, she married Lucian Vale. He closed his eyes. I thought she'd been seduced by Cassian's promises. I thought she was a victim too, in a way. But if Cassian is Lucian, if she knew... She knew, Elara said softly. She testified at your trial. I read the transcript. Damien's laugh was broken. What did she say? That you were exactly what you appeared to be. He opened his eyes, and they were glittering with something that looked like unshed tears. She always did have a talent for saying everything and nothing at once. They sat in silence for a moment, hands clasped through the partition. Then Fabian spoke again. His voice, rough. I need you to know something. Before all this, before the arrest, before Cassian and I built the company, I wasn't... He struggled for words. I told you I wasn't a good man. I meant it. We engaged in corporate espionage, hacked competitors, bribed officials. I destroyed lives to build my empire, Elara. I told myself it was business, that everyone did it, but that doesn't make it right. Did you ever physically hurt anyone? No. But I ruined them financially. Drove people to bankruptcy, depression. His eyes met hers. I need you to understand that I'm not some innocent victim. I just didn't commit the crime they convicted me for. Ilara absorbed this, the complexity of loving someone morally grey. I'm not walking away. You should. I love you, Damien. Not some fantasy. Not the billionaire you were. You. Broken, flawed, real. If you get out, you'll have to live with what you've done. So will I. But I'm not losing you. His control shattered. He pulled her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles through the small gap in the partition, and his voice was wrecked when he spoke. I don't know how to be good. But for you, I'll try. Ilara, I'll try so hard. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. Do you know what I think about in my cell at night? His voice dropped, rough and intimate. Your lips. The way you bite your lower lip when you're nervous. I want to bite it too, slowly, until you gasp my name. Ilara's breath caught. Damien, say it again. Like that. Desperate. His eyes were dark with promise and hunger. That's how I'm going to make you say it when I finally get my hands on you. Heat flooded her body, desire and longing tangling into something almost painful. When I get out, I'm taking you somewhere no one can find us, and I'm going to make love to you until the world disappears. He leaned as close as the barrier allowed. You're my future, Ilara, the only one I want. If the man you loved had done terrible things in his past, but not the crime he was imprisoned for, could you still fight for his freedom? The guard called time, and they separated reluctantly. She drove home with those words echoing in her mind, love and warning tangled together. Her apartment had been cleaned since the break-in she hadn't known about, everything exactly as she'd left it. But now, knowing someone had been inside, had photographed her work, the space felt violated. Jax called at 9 in the evening. I found something, he said without preamble. Mira Ashby, Damien's original lawyer, the one who supposedly committed suicide. What about her? She's alive. Ilara nearly dropped the phone. What? Hiding in a cabin in the Cascade Mountains, paranoid and guilt-ridden, but alive. I tracked her through old financial records, tiny transactions she thought were hidden. He paused. She's the key to this, Ilara. I can feel it. Can we talk to her? We can try. But she's scared. Really scared. It might take some convincing. When can we go? Tomorrow. I'll pick you up at 6 in the morning. The drive into the Cascades took 3 hours, winding through forests that grew progressively denser and more remote. Jax drove in focused silence, his eyes constantly checking the mirrors, and Ilara felt the weight of what they were doing settle over her like a shroud. If Mira Ashby was alive, if she'd faked her suicide, it meant the conspiracy went even deeper than they'd thought. The cabin appeared suddenly, a small structure nearly hidden among the trees. Smoke rose from the chimney. Jax parked 100 yards away and turned off the engine. Let me go first, he said. If she spooks, she might run. They approached carefully. Jax knocked on the door, and for a long moment, nothing happened. Then a voice, female and sharp with fear, called out, Who is it? My name is Jax Corvid. I'm a private investigator. I'm here about Fabian Ricochet. Go away. Please, Mira. I know you're scared, but Fabian has 82 days left to live. We need your help. Silence. Then the sound of multiple locks disengaging. The woman who opened the door was maybe 50, with grey-streaked hair pulled into a messy bun and eyes that darted like a cornered animal. She looked at Jax, then at Ilara, and something in her expression cracked. You're the girl from the dreams. Ilara blinked. How do you... Fabian talked about you. During the trial, he'd mentioned these dreams, this girl who visited him. I thought he was losing his mind. Mira's laugh was bitter. Turns out I was the one who'd lost something, my spine. Can we come in? Mira stepped aside reluctantly. The cabin's interior was sparse but clean, with a wood stove and shelves lined with legal books. She gestured to a worn couch. You have 5 minutes. Then you leave and never come back. Jax sat forward. Why did you fake your death? Mira's hands shook as she poured herself whiskey from a bottle on the counter. Because Senator K.L. Hargrave threatened my daughter. Showed me photographs of her at school, her route home, the cafe where she got coffee every morning. He paid me $2 million to throw Damien's case. Said if I did a good job, my daughter would be safe and I'd be rich. If I didn't, she'd die slowly, and they'd make me watch. Tears streamed down her face. I had to choose, my daughter or my client. I chose my daughter. I've lived with that choice for 15 years. Elara felt sick. You let an innocent man go to prison. I let an innocent man go to prison to save my child. Mira's voice rose. You don't get to judge me unless you've had to make that choice. Why fake your death? Because after the trial, I realized they'd never let me live. I've been here ever since, hiding like a coward. Jax leaned forward. Do you have proof of the conspiracy? Mira walked to a locked cabinet, opened it with a key from around her neck, and pulled out a hard drive, encrypted files, emails between Cassian, now Lucian, and Hargrave. Financial records showing the bribes, witness intimidation, everything. Elara's heart leaped. There's a problem. Mira's expression was grim. The files are encrypted with biometric data. Damien's retinal scan and fingerprint. Specifically, he built the encryption himself years ago as insurance. Without his biometrics, the files are useless. Can't we just get him to unlock them? He's in maximum security prison. You can't bring a hard drive into a visiting room, and even if you could, the files require medical-grade scanners for the biometrics. You'd need access to the prison's medical database. So we're back to square one. Not quite. Jax's mind was clearly working. If we could get someone inside, someone with access to the medical system, we could extract Damien's biometric data and unlock the files remotely. Who would take that risk? Mira and Jax both looked at Elara. She felt the weight of their gazes. I don't know anyone in the prison, she said slowly, except Officer Cross. Fabian mentioned a guard, Mira said. Riker Cross. Saved his life during a riot 2 years ago. If anyone in that prison might help, it's him. But how do we approach him? Elara asked. We can't just walk up and ask a corrections officer to commit a felony. You leave that to me, Jax said. I have ways of starting conversations. They left the cabin with the hard drive, Mira's haunted eyes watching them go. As they drove back towards Seattle, Elara's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop investigating Fabian Ricochet. This is your only warning. She showed Jax. He swore under his breath. They're watching. Closer than I thought. What do? We move faster. And we don't stop. Elara's third visit to the prison was on Friday, May 25th, 79 days left. The number haunted her, a countdown to an ending she refused to accept. This time, Officer Riker Cross escorted her personally to the visiting room. As they walked, she took a chance. Officer Cross, can I ask you something? He didn't look at her. Depends. Do you think Fabian Ricochet is guilty? Cross's jaw tightened. What I think doesn't matter, but you saved his life. During a riot, he stopped walking, turned to face her. His eyes were hard but not unkind. 2 years ago, 3 inmates tried to shank Ricochet in the yard. He didn't fight back, didn't even defend himself properly. Just took it, like he'd already given up. I intervened, because it was my job. He paused. But later, he thanked me. Most inmates don't do that. And he asked me about my daughter, how she was doing in school. He remembered I'd mentioned her once, months before. Murderers don't usually remember details about guards' kids. You don't think he did it? I think justice isn't always found in a courtroom. Cross started walking again, and I think some people have a vested interest in making sure Fabian Ricochet never sees freedom. That's all I can say. If someone needed help, Elara said carefully, to prove his innocence, would you? Don't finish that sentence, Miss Moonstone. Cross's voice was sharp. Don't ask me something that could cost me my job and my pension. But he stopped outside the visiting room door. If hypothetically someone needed access to medical records for legitimate legal purposes, and hypothetically that person had a lawyer file the proper motions, those records might become available through proper channels. Hypothetically, Elara understood. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just be smart. Fabian was already seated when she entered. His face lit up when he saw her, and the transformation was breathtaking. For just a moment he looked young and hopeful and unburdened. 3 times in 1 week, he said as she sat. I'm either the luckiest man in this prison, or you're seriously committed to this madness. Definitely the madness. She reached for his hand, and he took it immediately. We found your lawyer. Fabian went still. Mira's dead. No, she faked her death. She's alive, Damien. And she has evidence. Encrypted files that prove the conspiracy. She watched emotions flicker across his face. Shock, hope, anger, settling finally on wary caution. What kind of evidence? Everything. Emails between Cassian and Senator Hargrave. Financial records. Proof of witness intimidation. But, Elara hesitated, the files are encrypted with your biometrics. We need your retinal scan and fingerprint to unlock them. Of course they are. Damien's laugh was sharp. I built that encryption 7 years ago when I still thought I might find a way out of here. Insurance, in case anyone tried to destroy evidence. He rubbed his face. How do we access my medical records? We're working on it. Officer Cross might help if we approach it carefully. Damien's eyes sharpened. Riker? You talked to him? Briefly. I think he wants to help, but he's scared. And he should be. Everyone who helps me gets destroyed, Fabian said quietly. Mira threw my case and still had to fake her death. My appeals lawyer died. Even Cassian, in a twisted way, had to kill himself symbolically to escape me. I'm poison, Elara. Stop. Her voice was fierce. You're not poison. You're a man who was betrayed by people you trusted. That's not the same thing. He looked at her with something like wonder. How are you real? How do you look at me, knowing what I've done, what I've become, and still see something worth saving? Because I see you, she said simply. Not the mistakes, not the crimes you didn't commit or the morally grey areas you did. I see the man who survives every day in hell and still asks a guard about his daughter. That's who you are. What would you sacrifice to save someone you loved from an unjust fate, even if it meant risking everything you had? Fabian pulled her hand to his lips, kissing her palm through the partition gap, his breath warm against her skin. When I get out, and I'm starting to believe I might actually get out, I'm never letting you out of my sight. You're mine, Elara, for better or worse. And God help anyone who tries to take you from me. The possessive intensity in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel claimed and cherished in equal measure. I lie awake imagining our first night together, he continued, his voice dropping to that rough, intimate register that made her stomach flip. Not just the sex, though I want that until we're both wrecked, but after, you falling asleep in my arms, me watching you breathe, knowing you're real and mine and safe. Elara's eyes stung. We'll have that. I swear. I'm going to hold you to that promise. His thumb traced circles on her wrist. And when we do, I'm making you scream my name loud enough that the whole damn city knows who you belong to. The visit ended too soon, as they always did, but as Fabian was led away, he called back to her. Elara, be careful, please. Whoever framed me, they're watching. I'll be careful. But careful wasn't enough when the enemy was already 10 steps ahead. Elara returned to her apartment at 6:30 in the evening to find Sienna sitting on her couch, her face pale and her hands shaking. Sienna? What's wrong? Her best friend looked up, and her eyes were bright with fear. Someone followed me home from work today. Black sedan. tinted windows. They parked across the street and just watched for 2 hours. Then they left. Ilara's blood turned to ice. Did you call the police? And tell them what? That a car was parked legally on a public street. Sienna stood, wrapping her arms around herself. Ellie, what the hell have you gotten involved in? I'm sorry. Sienna, I'm so sorry. If I'd known they'd target you. Who are they? People who don't want Fabian Ricochet's case reopened. Powerful people. Ilara grabbed her friend's hands. You should leave Seattle for a while. Go visit your parents in Portland. Just until this is over. I'm not leaving you alone. You have to. If something happens to you because of me. She couldn't finish. Sienna's expression softened. You really love him, don't you? This man, you've only touched through prison glass. More than I thought it was possible to love someone. Okay. Sienna squeezed her hands. Okay. I'll go to Portland for a few weeks. But Ellie, you better survive this. Because if you die over some man, I'm going to kill you myself. Despite everything, Ilara laughed. Deal. But survival, she was learning, was never guaranteed. And the people hunting her were far more ruthless than she'd ever imagined. The package arrived on May 27th at 3 in the morning, delivered by someone who bypassed her building's security and left it directly outside her apartment door. Ilara found it when she stumbled out for water, unable to sleep. A plain cardboard box, no return address. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was Sienna's necklace, the silver compass her best friend never took off. It was covered in blood. Beneath it, a burner phone. It rang. The burner phone rang in her trembling hands. Ilara answered, her voice barely a whisper. Hello? Ellie, don't. Sienna's voice came through, terrified and broken, then cut off with a scream that turned Ilara's blood to ice. A man's voice replaced it, digitally distorted into something metallic and inhuman. Miss Moonstone, you've been very busy, visiting prisoners, hiring investigators, digging into matters that don't concern you. Where is she? Ilara's voice cracked. If you hurt her, I swear, you're not in a position to make threats. The voice was calm, almost bored. You have 24 hours to destroy all evidence you've collected regarding Fabian Ricochet. The hard drive from Mira Ashby, your research, everything. If you comply, your friend lives. If you don't. The sound of Sienna whimpering came through the line. Well, I think you understand. Please, she didn't do anything. This is between you and me. No, Miss Moonstone, this is between you and the choice you're about to make. Your friend's life or a murderer's freedom. Choose wisely. The line went dead. Ilara stood in her doorway, the bloody necklace clutched in one hand, the phone in the other, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she felt truly helpless. Her best friend, the person who'd stood by her through every crisis, every bad decision, every moment of doubt, was being tortured because Ilara had dared to believe in a man she'd only known through dreams and prison glass. She was vomiting in the sink when her phone rang again. Jax, I just got a message, he said without preamble. Photo of your friend, tied to a chair. You saw it too? They have her. Ilara was sobbing now, great heaving gasps that made it hard to speak. They want me to destroy everything. 24 hours. Don't give them anything. I'm tracking the photo's metadata now. We can find her. What if we're too late? We won't be. Meet me at my office in 30 minutes. And Ilara, bring a weapon if you have one. She didn't have a weapon. She had a kitchen knife, a tire iron from her car, and a rage so consuming it felt like it might burn her alive from the inside out. Jax's office was a converted warehouse in an industrial part of Seattle, the kind of place where no one asked questions. He was already working when she arrived, multiple monitors displaying code, satellite imagery, and what looked like dark web forums. The photo was sent from a burner device, but whoever took it was sloppy. He zoomed in on the background. See this? reflection in the window, waterfront location, based on the shipping containers. And this, he enhanced another section, logo on a crate. That's Pacific Northwest Maritime. They lease warehouse space near Pier 41. How many warehouses? 17. But only 3 are currently leased to shell companies. He pulled up records. This one, Cascadia Holdings, is owned by a subsidiary of a subsidiary that eventually traces back to Senator Cale Hargrave. Then that's where she is. Probably. Jax leaned back. But it's also probably a trap. They want you to come, want to eliminate you, and recover the evidence all at once. I don't care. Ilara's voice was steel. I'm not leaving her there. I know. That's why I'm coming with you. He opened a locked cabinet, revealing an arsenal that made Ilara's eyes widen. Ever fired a gun? No. Tonight you learn. We have 6 hours until the address goes dark. If we're doing this, we do it at 2 in the morning when security is lightest. What about Damien? I need to tell him. Absolutely not. You go to that prison, you're being watched every second. They'll know we're planning something. Jax handed her a compact 9mm. After this is over, after we get your friend back, then you tell him. But Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that she was betraying Fabian somehow, walking into danger without letting him know, as if sensing her thoughts from across the miles of concrete and razor wire, as if their connection transcended the physical distance between them. She texted the prison administrator's office at midnight, requesting an emergency visit for the following day, family crisis as the reason. The approval came through at 1 in the morning. Saturday, May 28th, 9 in the morning. 77 days left. But first, she had to survive the night. Jax drove them to Pier 41 in a black SUV with tinted windows and plates he assured her were untraceable. Ilara wore dark clothing and a bulletproof vest that felt absurdly heavy. The gun at her hip was a foreign weight, uncomfortable and terrifying. The warehouse loomed against the Seattle skyline, dark except for a single light on the second floor. Jax parked 3 blocks away and they approached on foot, keeping to shadows. He'd brought thermal imaging equipment, and through it they could see 3 heat signatures inside, 2 standing, 1 seated. The seated figure was smaller, slight, Sienna. 2 guards, Jax whispered. Possibly more we can't see. I'll go in from the east entrance, draw their attention. You come in from the west. Get your friend. Get out. Do not engage unless you have to. What about you? I've been shot before, survived every time. His grin was sharp in the darkness. Don't worry about me. They separated. Ilara's heart was a war drum, so loud she was certain everyone within a mile could hear it. The west entrance was a rusted metal door, unlocked. She slipped inside, the gun raised the way Jax had taught her, finger off the trigger until ready to fire. The interior was exactly what she'd expected, concrete floors, shipping containers stacked like metal coffins, shadows everywhere. She moved toward the light source, toward where the thermal imaging had shown Sienna. Then she heard Jax's voice, loud and authoritative. Seattle police! Everyone on the ground! Gunfire erupted, deafening in the enclosed space. Ilara ran toward the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, and burst into the second-floor room. Sienna was there, tied to a chair, duct tape over her mouth, blood crusted on her temple. Her eyes went wide when she saw Ilara, but they weren't alone. Senator Cale Hargrave stood near the window, flanked by 2 men in tactical gear. He was older than his photographs, maybe 60, with silver hair and the kind of face that suggested he'd never been told no in his entire life. Miss Moonstone, he said pleasantly, as if they were meeting at a cocktail party. So predictable. We counted on your heroic impulses. Ilara raised the gun, surprised by how steady her hands were. Let her go. Or what? You'll shoot a United States senator? Hargrave smiled. You're many things, my dear, but you're not a killer. Try me. He studied her. and something shifted in his expression. Perhaps you are. At that. Love does make people remarkably stupid. More gunfire from below. Jax was either winning or dying, and Ilara couldn't tell which. Then, a new voice cut through the tension, female and elegant and cold. That's enough, Kale. A woman stepped from the shadows near the far wall, and Ilara's breath caught. She was beautiful in the way of old money and careful breeding. Late 30s, wearing a tailored suit that probably cost more than Ilara's car. Her dark hair was pulled into a severe bun, and her eyes were the green of expensive emeralds. Isolde Severin Vale, Damien's ex-fiancée, Cassian's widow, and Lucian's wife. She was holding a gun, and it was pointed at Hargrave. The senator's face darkened. "What are you doing?" "Something I should have done 15 years ago." Isolde's voice was steady. "Let the girl and her friend go. You're insane. Do you have any idea what—" "I have recordings, Kyle. Everything. Your calls with Lucian, the bribes, the witness intimidation, the plot to frame Damien, all of it. And it's all being uploaded to multiple news outlets as we speak." Hargrave's face went white. "You wouldn't. I already have." Isolde's gun didn't waver. "I've spent 15 years living with what I did to Damien. Chose money and status over the only man who ever loved me for who I was, not what I could provide. I married Cassian for his promises, and when he became Lucian, I married him again out of fear. But I've been gathering evidence against both of you for 3 years, waiting for the right moment." She looked at Ilara. "You were that moment. When I saw you visiting Damien, saw the way he looked at you, the way you looked at him, I remembered what it felt like to be loved like that, and I couldn't let you lose him the way I lost him." "This is touching," Hargrave sneered, "but you're throwing away everything for justice, for the man I destroyed." Isolde's voice cracked. "I can't undo what I did. I can't give Fabian back the 15 years he lost, but I can give him his freedom." One of Hargrave's guards moved. Isolde fired, the shot taking him in the shoulder. He went down screaming. The second guard reached for his weapon. Ilara fired without thinking. The recoil shocked her, the sound deafening. The guard stumbled back, clutching his thigh, and his gun clattered to the floor. Hargrave raised his hands. "You're both making a terrible mistake. The only mistake was trusting you." Isolde moved to Sienna, cut her bonds with a knife from her pocket. Ilara caught her friend as she stumbled forward, pulling the tape from her mouth. "Ellie," Sienna gasped. Jax appeared in the doorway, breathing hard, a cut above his eye. "We need to move. I called the real cops. They'll be here in 5 minutes." Isolde handed Ilara a USB drive. "Everything you need to free Damien. Emails between Lucian and Hargrave. Financial records proving the frame-up. Witness statements from people they threatened. It's all there. Why are you helping us?" "Because I loved him once." Isolde's eyes were wet. "And because he deserves better than what I gave him, better than what this world gave him." She looked at Ilara with something like envy. "Love him the way I should have. Don't make my mistakes." They fled into the night, sirens wailing in the distance. Sienna was crying, traumatized but alive. Jax drove like a man possessed, putting miles between them and the warehouse. Ilara clutched the USB drive and thought, "I'm coming, Damien. I'm bringing you home." The emergency prison visit was approved for 9 in the morning. Ilara had been awake for 29 hours straight, running on adrenaline and coffee and the desperate need to see Damien, to tell him they had a chance. Officer Cross escorted her to the visiting room with knowing eyes. "Heard there was some excitement at the waterfront last night. Senator Hargrave in custody, allegations of conspiracy." He paused. "That wouldn't have anything to do with you, would it?" "I have no idea what you're talking about." He almost smiled. "Damien's waiting. And Miss Moonstone?" "He's been agitated. Since your emergency visit request came through, thought something happened to you." The visiting room door opened, and Fabian was already there, secured to the table. The moment he saw her, his entire body sagged with relief, so profound it was almost painful to witness. "You're alive." His voice was rough. "When I heard emergency visit, I thought, God, Elara, I thought they'd killed you." She sat, reached for his hand, and he grabbed hers with both of his, holding on like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to earth. "I'm okay. We have the evidence, Damien. Everything we need to prove you were framed." She told him everything. The abduction, the warehouse, Isolde's betrayal turned redemption, Hargrave's arrest, the USB drive with files that could set him free. Fabian listened, his expression cycling through shock, rage, grief, and finally something that looked like fragile hope. "Isolde helped you," he said quietly. "After everything?" She said she's lived with guilt for 15 years. That she chose wrong, chose money and status over love. Elara squeezed his hands. "She can't give you back the time you lost, but she can give you your freedom." "There's a problem though, isn't there?" It wasn't a question. Fabian knew her too well already, could read the hesitation in her eyes. "What is it?" "The evidence proves Cassian framed you. But to testify, to explain how their system worked, you'd have to admit to the illegal activities you and Cassian engaged in before the murder. Corporate espionage, hacking, bribery. So I trade a murder conviction for a dozen other charges, maybe. Or maybe with Hargrave facing conspiracy charges and Lucian exposed, prosecutors offer you immunity in exchange for testimony." Elara's voice was fierce. "Either way, you won't die in 77 days. We can fight whatever comes next." Together, Damien's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I don't deserve you. I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to be real. To try. That's all." His control shattered. He pulled her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles, her palm, her wrist, anywhere he could reach through the partition gap. "Time's up," the guard said. As Fabian stood, Officer Cross appeared at Elara's shoulder. "Miss Moonstone," a word outside. She followed him into the corridor. Cross looked both ways, then spoke quietly and quickly. "Lucian Vale has put a hit out on Damien. Inside the prison. $50,000 to whoever kills him and makes it look like an accident." He paused. "I can protect him for maybe a week, maybe less. You need to move fast." Elara's blood went cold. "Get him out." Cross held her gaze. "I didn't say that. But hypothetically, if someone were to stage a federal transfer during, say, a facility-wide investigation into corruption, it might be possible for a prisoner to be moved to a different facility. And if the paperwork were convincing enough, if the timing were perfect, that prisoner might disappear for 48 hours before anyone realized the transfer was fraudulent. You're talking about breaking him out. I'm talking about hypotheticals." Cross's expression was stone. "But if you're going to do something crazy, do it in the next 72 hours. After that, I can't help you." He walked away before she could respond. Elara called Jax from her car, hands shaking. "We need to break him out." "Yeah," Jax said calmly. "I figured we'd get here eventually." "When?" 72 hours. "Before the hit inside happens." "Jesus. Okay. I'll make some calls. This is going to be expensive." "How expensive?" 200,000, maybe more. Forged federal documents, bribed guards, a clean vehicle, safe house, new identities in case this goes sideways. "I don't have that kind of money. I know someone who does." Jax paused. "Question is, do you trust Isolde Severin Vale?" Elara thought about the woman who'd held a gun on a senator, who'd spent years gathering evidence out of guilt and love for a man she'd betrayed. "Do we have a choice?" "Not really." "Then yes, I trust her." The plan came together with the kind of precision that only desperation and unlimited money could buy. Isolde wired $300,000 to an account Jax controlled. She also used her media connections to leak information about corruption at Washington State Penitentiary, allegations of guard bribery and inmate abuse. Within 48 hours, the story was national news. Federal investigators announced a surprise audit of the facility, scheduled for May 30th. All prisoner transfers would be temporarily suspended, except for federal cases requiring immediate relocation. Jax had forged documents ready, a federal warrant for Fabian Ricochet's transfer to a maximum security facility in California for testimony in an ongoing white-collar crime investigation. The paperwork was flawless, complete with signatures from judges who existed and case numbers that matched real proceedings. Officer Riker Cross was the inside man. He'd arranged to be on duty during the transfer window. The plan was simple in theory, terrifying in execution. May 30th, 2 in the afternoon, 74 days until execution. Ilara waited in a black SUV 3 blocks from the prison, wearing a female corrections officer's uniform that Jax had acquired through methods she didn't want to know about. Her heart was beating so fast she felt dizzy. Jax was in the driver's seat, his expression calm. If this works, we have 48 hours before the FBI realizes the transfer was fake. 48 hours to expose Lucian Vale and clear Damien's name. If we fail, you both go to prison for a very long time. Then we don't fail. Her phone buzzed. Cross. Package. Ready for pickup. This was it. The moment everything either came together or fell apart spectacularly. They drove to the prisoner transport entrance. Jax handed over the forged documents to the gate guard, who studied them for what felt like an eternity before nodding and waving them through. The prison's interior was chaos. Federal investigators in suits and badges, administrators scrambling, inmates being locked down. In the confusion, no one paid attention to one more transfer van. Officer Cross met them at the secure transport bay. His face was carefully neutral. Federal transfer for prisoner 87459, Fabian Ricochet. Behind him, flanked by 2 guards Ilara didn't recognize, was Damien. He wore a prison-issue jumpsuit and wrist restraints, but his eyes, the moment they landed on Ilara in her disguise, widened with understanding. She saw him make the choice in real time. Trust her or fight this. He chose trust. The guards loaded him into the back of the van. Cross handed Jax a clipboard. He'll be your problem now. Good luck. As they pulled away from the prison, Ilara climbed into the back with Damien. A guard, one of Jax's hired men, removed the wrist restraints. Fabian stared at her. You broke me out. We broke you out. She was half laughing, half crying. You're free. For the next 48 hours, you're free. He reached for her, and she went to him, and for the first time ever they touched without barriers. His hands cupped her face, shaking, and his voice was wrecked. You're real. You're here. I can touch you. You sen finden, nodin sunden sen ten. She covered his hands with hers. I'm here. They drove for an hour to a safe house in the mountains outside Seattle, a cabin that Isolde owned under a shell company, remote, secure, off any grid that mattered. The moment they were inside, the moment the door closed and they were alone, Fabian turned to Ilara with an expression of such raw hunger and love that her breath stopped. Ilara, he said, and it wasn't a question or a statement. It was a prayer. I'm here, she whispered. He crossed the room in 3 strides, cupped her face, and kissed her. 15 years of longing, 10 years of dreams, all of it poured into that first kiss. His lips were warm and demanding, and she gasped against his mouth. He groaned, deepening the kiss, his hands sliding into her hair. I've dreamed of this, he breathed against her lips. But reality is so much better. She tugged at his shirt, and he pulled it off. Her hands explored his chest, mapping scars she'd never seen, feeling the rapid beat of his heart. He shuddered under her touch. Ilara, he said again, and there was question in it. He lifted her, and she wrapped her legs around his waist. He carried her to the bedroom, laid her on the bed with a gentleness that contradicted the fire in his eyes. "You're sure?" His voice was rough. "Yes, I am sure." He kissed her again, slower this time, worshipping. His hands learned the shape of her, sliding under her shirt, warm against her skin. She arched into his touch, and he made a sound low in his throat that sent heat pooling through her. Clothes disappeared, skin against skin. He touched her like she was something precious and profane all at once, his fingers tracing patterns that made her gasp his name. "Say it again," he demanded, his voice gravel and smoke. "Like that. Desperate." "Damien," she breathed, and he captured her mouth in a kiss that consumed her. When he finally moved inside her, they both went still, eyes locked. The connection was overwhelming, physical and emotional, and something deeper, something that transcended the boundaries of flesh. He set a rhythm that unraveled her, whispering filthy praise against her skin. "You're perfect. So perfect. I've waited so long for this. For you." She fell apart in his arms, crying out his name, and he followed her over the edge moments later, burying his face in her neck. After, they lay tangled together, hearts gradually slowing. He pressed kisses to her hair, her temple, anywhere he could reach. "I love you," he murmured. "I'll never let you go. You're mine, Elara, forever." She smiled against his chest. Forever sounds perfect. They made love again, slower, relearning each other. And again after that, urgent and desperate, as if they could make up for 15 years of separation in one night. As dawn broke, Fabian held her close, watching her sleep, and for the first time in 15 years, he felt something like hope. Outside the safe house, a drone camera hovered, silent and patient. Miles away, Lucien Vale reviewed the footage on a tablet, his expression cold. "They think they've won," he said to the man standing beside him. "How sweet. What do you want us to do? Let them have their moment." Lucien's smile was sharp. "Tomorrow, we remind them who really holds the power." Elara woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows, and Damien's arm heavy across her waist. For a moment, she forgot where they were, forgot everything except the warmth of his body against hers. Then memory crashed back. The breakout, the 48-hour deadline, the USB drive with evidence they still needed to make public. Fabian stirred, opened his eyes, and smiled at her with such unguarded happiness that her heart squeezed. "Morning," he said, voice rough with sleep. His hand traced lazy patterns on her hip. "Tell me this is real." "It's real." She kissed him. "But we have work to do." "I know." He pulled her closer. 5 more minutes." They took 10, lost in each other, before reality dragged them back. Jax arrived at 8, with coffee and grim news. Lucien Vale is holding a tech gala tonight at the Fairmont Olympic. 500 guests, including government officials and military contractors. He's unveiling some new quantum encryption system. Damien's expression darkened. "That's our technology. Modified maybe, but it's built on what Cassian and I created. This is our chance." Elara sat up, pulling the sheet around herself. "We expose him publicly, in front of witnesses he can't silence. There's a problem." Jax pulled up information on his tablet. "I've been analyzing Lucien's systems. He's built a failsafe into his network. If anyone tries to expose him, if his identity as Cassian Vale goes public, it triggers a cyber attack that crashes the Pacific Northwest power grid. Millions without electricity, hospitals, water treatment, everything." Fabian took the tablet, studied the code. His jaw tightened. "This is my encryption architecture. He's weaponized it. Can you stop it?" Elara asked. "Maybe. If I can access his servers directly. But I'd need to be at the gala, physically connected to his network, and even then, his expression was grim. It's a 50-50 chance at best. If I'm wrong, millions of people suffer, and I become a domestic terrorist instead of a murderer. We can't just let him win," Elara said fiercely. "We won't." Fabian set down the tablet. There's always a third way. Cassian, Lucian, he was brilliant but arrogant. He'd want a back door, a way to shut down the failsafe if he needed to. If I can find it. You'll need his current biometric data, Jax interrupted. The failsafe requires his retinal scan and fingerprint to override. So we get them. Ilara's mind was racing. He'll be at the gala. We get close. Somehow extract what we need. You're talking about walking into a room full of his allies and security. Jax's expression was skeptical. How exactly do you plan to do that? Isolde, Fabian said quietly. She can get us in. She's still legally his wife. She'd have access. Can we trust her? Jax asked. Yes, we can trust her. Isolde arrived at the safe house 2 hours later, carrying garment bags and a makeup case. When she saw Damien, standing free in a cabin living room wearing borrowed jeans and a t-shirt, she stopped. The silence stretched, painful and heavy with history. Fabian spoke first. Isolde. Damien. Her voice was carefully controlled. You look different. Older, thanks to 15 years in prison. She flinched. I know I can't. There's nothing I can say that would earn your forgiveness. You're helping us now, that's what matters. Isolde's composure cracked slightly. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I was young and stupid and greedy. I chose money over love, over you, and I've regretted it every day since. But you married him again, when he became Lucian, because I was terrified. She met his eyes. Cassian died and became Lucian, and I realized what he was capable of, what he'd done to you. If I'd refused to marry him, if I'd gone to the police, I'd be dead. So I married him and played the dutiful wife and gathered evidence and waited for a chance to make it right. Fabian studied her. You could have come forward years ago and gotten myself killed for nothing? No. I waited until I had enough to bury him. Until there was someone, she looked at Ilara, worth saving you for. Ilara stepped forward. We need your help tonight. At the gala. I know. Isolde opened the garment bags. That's why I brought these. If we're crashing Lucian's party, we should look the part. The gala at the Fairmont Olympic was exactly what Ilara expected, opulent, excessive, crawling with wealth and power. She wore a midnight blue gown that Isolde had provided, her hair styled in elegant waves. Fabian stood beside her in a tailored tuxedo, clean-shaven for the first time in 15 years, looking every inch the billionaire he'd once been. You're staring, he murmured. You're beautiful. He smiled, touched her cheek. You're the beautiful one. I'm just the criminal trying not to get arrested before we pull this off. Jax was their eyes and ears, monitoring security feeds from a van outside. Isolde was their key, her invitation granting them access. As they entered the ballroom, Damien's hand tightened on Ilara's. Across the room, holding court among senators and CEOs, was Lucian Vale. He looked like Cassian but refined. Older, silver touching his temples. Expensive suit, the bearing of a man who'd never been told no. When his eyes landed on their group, on Isolde and the man beside her, his expression froze. For a heartbeat, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Then, Lucian smiled, excused himself from his conversation, and walked toward them with predatory grace. Isolde, he said warmly, kissing her cheek. I wasn't expecting you tonight. Last-minute decision. Her voice was steady. I brought guests. I hope that's acceptable. Lucian's gaze slid to Damien, and something dark flickered in his eyes. Of course, any friend of yours is. He stopped, really looking. Do I know you? Damien's smile was sharp as broken glass. We knew each other. Once, a long time ago. I've changed since then. Would you have the courage to face the person who destroyed your life, knowing one wrong move could cost you everything? Recognition dawned. Lucian's face went white. That's impossible. Is it? Damien's voice was conversational. You faked your own death, framed me for murder, stole 15 years of my life. Why is it impossible that I'd find a way out?" "Security," Lucian said quietly, and men in suits began moving through the crowd. "I wouldn't," Jax's voice came through their hidden earpieces. "I've got my finger on the button that uploads every file Isolde gathered to every major news outlet. You want Fabian arrested? Fine. But in 60 seconds, the world knows Cassian Vale is alive and you're a fraud." Lucian's jaw clenched. "What do you want?" "Justice." Elara stepped forward. "You're going to confess. Publicly. To framing Damien. To everything. Or what? The power grid crashes and you become terrorists." Fabian moved faster than anyone expected, his hand shooting out to grab Lucian's wrist. In his palm, a device Jax had built, scanning retinal patterns and fingerprints in seconds. "Or I use your biometrics to shut down your failsafe and expose you anyway." Damien's voice was cold. "You always were arrogant, Cassian. Always needed an escape hatch. I found it." Lucian tried to pull away, but Fabian held firm. Around them, security was closing in. Guests were murmuring, the gala descending into chaos. "Got it," Jax said in their ears. "Biometrics acquired. Accessing failsafe now." What Fabian hadn't told anyone was that shutting down the failsafe wasn't enough. He'd spent the last hour writing code, a virus designed to unravel Lucian's entire network, to expose every file, every transaction, every crime. As Jax uploaded it using Lucian's stolen biometrics, Fabian leaned close to the man who'd destroyed his life. "You took everything from me. My company, my freedom. 15 years I'll never get back. But you know what? I survived. I found love in the darkest place imaginable. And now I'm taking everything from you." The screens throughout the ballroom flickered, then filled with data. Emails, financial records, everything Isolde had gathered and more, pulled from Lucian's own servers. Security grabbed Damien, but it was too late. The evidence was everywhere, broadcasting to every device in the building, uploading to news servers worldwide. Lucian Vale's face crumbled as he watched his empire burn. FBI agents arrived within minutes. Real ones this time. They arrested Lucian first, then turned to Damien. "Fabian Ricochet, you're wanted for escaping federal custody." Fabian held out his wrists. "I know. But you'll find I'm also the victim of a 15-year conspiracy that your colleagues are currently reading about on every news site in America." The lead agent hesitated, then made a call. After a tense conversation, he lowered his cuffs. "You're coming with us. But not in handcuffs. Yet." At FBI headquarters, Elara watched through a one-way mirror as Fabian gave his testimony. Every crime he and Cassian had committed. Every detail of the frame-up. Every moment of the last 15 years. An attorney Isolde had hired, one of the best in the country, sat beside him. When Fabian finished, the federal prosecutor leaned back. "Mr. Ricochet, you've confessed to approximately 37 felonies." "I have." "You've also been the victim of conspiracy, wrongful imprisonment, and attempted murder." "Also true." The prosecutor glanced at her colleagues. "We're prepared to offer you full immunity in exchange for testimony against Lucian Vale and Senator Hargrave. Your previous crimes fall outside our statute of limitations in most cases. The ones that don't, we're willing to overlook given the circumstances." "What about the prison break? House arrest until trial?" "Then, assuming Vale is convicted, full pardon." Fabian looked at the mirror, as if he could see Elara through it. "Deal." The federal prosecutor stepped out of the interrogation room and found Elara pacing the hallway, her arms wrapped around herself like she was holding herself together by force of will alone. "Miss Moonstone," the prosecutor said, and her voice was softer than it had been inside. She paused. "Mr. Ricochet will be released on house arrest pending trial. He'll wear an ankle monitor. He can't leave King County. But he's free to go home with you tonight." Elara's knees nearly buckled. Tonight? The evidence against Vale and Hargrave is overwhelming. Frankly, we need Fabian more than he needs us at this point. The prosecutor handed her a card. My personal number. If he remembers anything else, if anyone threatens either of you, call me immediately. 2 hours later, Elara and Fabian walked out of the FBI building into the Seattle night. He stopped on the steps, tilted his head back, and breathed in air that didn't smell like concrete and despair. 15 years, he said quietly. 15 years since I stood outside and just breathed. She took his hand, laced their fingers together. Come on, let's go home. Home was Elara's small apartment, the one she'd nearly lost during her obsessive investigation. It felt impossibly tiny with Fabian in it, this man who'd once commanded boardrooms and built empires. He stood in the middle of her living room, turning slowly, taking in the evidence board she'd never taken down, the printed articles about his case, the photograph of him she'd pinned to the wall. You really did throw your entire life away for me, he said, touching the edge of a highlighted article. I got a better life in return. He turned to face her, and the vulnerability in his expression made her chest ache. I don't know how to do this. Be free. Be normal. Wake at 6, breakfast at 7, yard time, work detail, lockdown. I don't. His hands curled into fists. I don't know who I am outside those walls. Elara crossed to him, took his clenched hands in hers. Then we'll figure it out together. One day at a time. That first night, Fabian woke screaming at 2 in the morning, fighting invisible enemies, and it took Elara 10 minutes to calm him down enough to remember where he was. He sat on the edge of the bed afterward, his head in his hands, the ankle monitor blinking red in the darkness. I'm sorry, he said. This is going to keep happening. The nightmares. I'm broken, Elara. She wrapped herself around him from behind, her cheek pressed to his scarred back. Then we'll be broken together. The trial began on September 15th, exactly 4 months after Elara had first walked into that prison visiting room. The media coverage was insane, every network running constant updates. Billionaire framed for murder. Tech mogul's 15-year conspiracy. The girl who dreamed him free. Fabian testified for 3 days straight, his voice steady as he recounted every detail. The corporate espionage he and Cassian had engaged in. The frame-up. The 15 years in maximum security. Lucian Vale, sitting at the defense table, never once looked at him. But Fabian looked at Lucian plenty. And on the 3rd day, during a break, he did something that surprised everyone. He approached the defense table. Security moved to intervene, but Fabian raised his hands, showing he meant no harm. He just looked down at the man who'd stolen his life and said, quietly enough that only Lucian could hear, I forgive you. Lucian's head snapped up, shock written across his face. Not for you, Fabian continued, for me. Because holding on to hate for 15 years nearly destroyed me, so I'm letting it go. You'll spend the rest of your life in a cage, and I'll spend the rest of mine free. That's justice enough. He walked away, and Elara, watching from the gallery, fell in love with him all over again. Lucian Vale was convicted on October 3rd. All charges. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Life without possibility of parole. Senator Hargrave, who'd already taken a plea deal, was sentenced 2 weeks later, 20 years in federal prison. And on October 17th, in a courtroom packed with journalists and cameras, Judge Maria Campbell looked at Fabian Ricochet and said the words he'd been waiting 15 years to hear. Mr. Ricochet, your conviction is hereby vacated. You are fully exonerated of all charges related to the murder of Cassian Vale. This court recognizes the grave injustice done to you, and on behalf of the state of Washington, I offer our deepest apologies. You are free to go. The courtroom erupted. Fabian stood, and his lawyer was saying something, but he couldn't hear it over the rushing in his ears. Free. He was free. October 17th. The date that had been circled on the calendar as his execution day was instead the day he got his life back. Elara met him outside the courtroom, and he pulled her into his arms, buried his face in her hair, and shook with sobs he'd been holding back for months. "It's over," she whispered. "It's finally over." But freedom, Fabian discovered, was more complicated than he'd imagined. His assets were unfrozen, 15 years of accumulated wealth suddenly accessible again. He was worth over $300 million, investments and patents that had continued to generate income even while he'd been locked away. But the money felt meaningless. He couldn't sleep in a bed that was too soft, couldn't handle crowds without panic attacks, flinched when people moved too quickly near him, woke at 6 every morning out of habit and didn't know what to do with himself. 2 weeks after his exoneration, Elara found him standing on the balcony of the new penthouse he'd purchased, staring out at the Seattle skyline at 3 in the morning. "Can't sleep?" she asked, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders. "I keep waiting for a guard to do count, to tell me to get back in my cell." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. 15 years in a cage, and now I have all this space, all this freedom, and I don't know what to do with it. "What do you want to do?" He turned to face her. "I want to be worthy of you, of this second chance. But I don't know how." She took his hand. "What if we started a foundation? Used your wealth to help people who've been wrongly convicted, fund investigations, pay for lawyers, give them what Jax and Isolde and I gave you." Something shifted in his expression. "You'd do that with me?" "I'd do anything with you." He cupped her face, his thumb stroking her cheekbone. "How did I get so lucky? I was rotting in a cell, planning my own death, and you appeared in my dreams like some impossible angel. You saved me, Elara. In every way a person can be saved. You saved yourself. I just reminded you that you were worth saving." He kissed her then, soft and deep and full of promise. When he pulled back, he was smiling for real, the first genuine smile she'd seen since his release. "Marry me," she blinked. "What?" "Damien, we've been together for 10 years, 7 for me. Just because we couldn't touch doesn't mean we didn't know each other." He got down on one knee right there on the balcony, pulled a ring from his pocket that he must have been carrying, waiting for the right moment. "Elara Moonstone, will you marry me?" Through tears, she said, "Yes, always yes." They married in November, 6 months after Elara had first walked into Washington State Penitentiary. The ceremony was small, intimate, held in a garden overlooking Puget Sound. Sienna was maid of honor, dabbing at her eyes and muttering about crazy best friends who fall in love with convicted murderers and somehow make it work. Jax stood as best man, looking uncomfortable in a suit. Isolde attended, sitting quietly in the back, her expression bittersweet. Officer Riker Cross came too, bringing his daughter, the girl Fabian had asked about all those months ago. The officiant asked if anyone objected. Silence. Then Fabian turned to Elara, and when he spoke his vows, his voice was steady, but thick with emotion. "Elara, you appeared in my dreams when I'd given up on everything. You looked at me like I was still human when I'd forgotten how to be. You fought for me when everyone else said I was guilty. You loved me when I was unlovable." His eyes were bright. "I can't give you back the life you gave up for me. I can't erase the danger you faced or the fear you felt. But I can promise you this. I will spend every day of the rest of my life trying to be the man you believed I was. I'll love you fiercely and completely. I'll protect you. I'll cherish you. And I will never, ever take for granted the miracle of having you in my arms." Elara's turn. She held his hands and spoke through tears. "Damien, I've known you for 10 years. I've loved you for 10 years. In dreams, you were my companion in the dark. In waking, you became my purpose. You're not perfect. You've made mistakes. But you're real, you're mine, and you're exactly who I choose. Every day. For the rest of my life. Her voice strengthened. I promise to stand beside you as you heal, to remind you that you're free when the nightmares make you forget, to build a life with you that's worth all the pain it took to get here. I love you, broken, scarred, beautiful you. The officiant pronounced them married, and when Fabian kissed his wife, the small gathering erupted in applause. At the reception, Isolde approached them during a quiet moment. She looked elegant and sad, holding a glass of champagne she hadn't touched. I'm leaving Seattle, she said. Moving to Europe. Starting over. Fabian nodded. She looked at Elara. Take care of him. He deserves someone who will. I will. Isolde started to walk away, then paused. Damien, thank you for forgiving me. I don't deserve it, but thank you. Everyone deserves a second chance, he said quietly. Even you. She left, and Elara never saw her again. The wedding night was everything and more. Fabian carried Elara over the threshold of their penthouse, and the gesture was both traditional and deeply meaningful for a man who'd spent 15 years unable to touch the woman he loved. He set her down gently, and his eyes were dark with desire and love tangled together. Mrs. Ricochet, he said, his voice rough, do you have any idea how long I've waited to say that? He kissed her, deep and consuming, and whispered against her lips, I love you, he murmured against her hair. More than words can express. She smiled against his chest. I love you too. He was quiet for a moment. Then, Elara? Thank you for not giving up on me. For believing in dreams and impossibilities. For saving my life. She tilted her head up to look at him. You saved mine too. I didn't know I was searching for something until I found you. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other, and for the first time in either of their lives, neither of them dreamed. They didn't need to anymore. Reality was better than any dream. 3 years later, Fabian and Elara stood in the offices of the Moonstone Ricochet Foundation, reviewing case files of potentially wrongful convictions. They'd hired a team of investigators, partnered with innocence projects nationwide, and in 3 years had helped exonerate 17 people. Fabian still had nightmares sometimes, still flinched at loud noises, still woke at 6 in the morning out of habit. But the panic attacks had lessened. The therapy helped, and Elara was always there, reminding him he was free. He'd also started speaking publicly about prison reform, using his platform and wealth to advocate for better conditions, better rehabilitation programs, better alternatives to incarceration. Elara had returned to art curation, but now she ran a gallery that exclusively featured work by formerly incarcerated artists, giving voices to people the world had tried to silence. On the anniversary of Damien's exoneration, October 17th, they returned to the garden where they'd married. It had become their tradition, a reminder of how far they'd come. He kissed the top of her head. I'm the luckiest man alive. I went to hell and came back, and somehow I got to keep the angel who saved me. I'm not an angel. You are to me. The end. Here's the truth. The greatest love stories aren't the easy ones. They're the ones that demand everything, that test you and break you, and rebuild you into someone stronger. They're the ones where you look at the impossible distance between where you are and where you want to be, and you start walking anyway. Beloved listener, did you enjoy this story? Rate this story from 1 to 10. I'll see you in my next story. Lots of love.